Hi there, this is Manuel Blanco, GAUGECASH founder. Today we'll start lecture number 3 in this series about the whole protocol at a deeper level. And today, after what we learned last time, lecture number 2, I am going to talk about the GAUGECASH solution. So for that, I would like to make just a quick recap. And last time I talked about Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, let's remember, is an electronic peer-to-peer cash system. Their issuance model was totally done by the concept of giving a free service with a scarcity built on it. So then if the service was demanded, then by the laws of supply and demand, the price will go up or will get some price. But we learned that that had a problem, which is volatility. I'll write that down, volatility. And now after almost a decade, I mean more than a decade, we have the problem of scalability. And I talk about that volatility is not a problem if the market reaches certain kind of equilibrium, okay? I mentioned last time that these concepts are can be calculated, meaning what is a market in equilibrium, from concepts from a field of mathematics called game theory, specifically what is called Nash equilibriums. I will not get into that from the mathematical point of view, but what I just want to say is that it's very well established. I will give you some hints or ideas or analogies, so maybe you can have some idea what we're talking about. But hopefully after this lecture, it's very, very clear what the GAUGECASH solution is bringing to the table that, as far as we know, we haven't seen in any other project. So now that you know these things, the question, so to sometimes to try to solve a important problem, say in science, you need to ask a good question first. So now the question is very clear, or was very clear for us. So the question was, okay, how do we have an electronic peer-to-peer cash system, it works. It has all these amazing features that has never been implemented before with Bitcoin. I'm talking about Bitcoin. And now the question is, how can we make an electronic peer-to-peer decentralized meaning by definition, right? Using blockchain technology. So moving forward with the same philosophy as Bitcoin had in terms of distributed systems, but that is stable and that can scale. So that's the important question that we made. So we solve. So the question is, let's add to the problem that Bitcoin solved these two factors. And let's remember that in 2015, as we talked again last time, I told you about Ethereum and what Ethereum brought to the table. So with Ethereum, there's many things that we could do now that we couldn't do in terms of programming in the blockchain of Bitcoin. And those are very, very useful. Some of those things are very, very useful in order to accomplish this solution. And now we have advancements in second generation, let's call them like that, blockchains that are addressing more scalability for decentralized computing, right? Let's start then. That was just a small recap and intro. So the first thing is we need to establish some understanding about economics. So when we talk about, remember, when we talk about technologies for exchanging value, we said that what is important is trust, that it solves the problem of double spending problem. I'm talking about gold, talking about paper money, I'm talking about third trusted parties, meaning banks. They do the same with digital technologies, like SWIFT, for example, for overseas transactions. And that someone holds accountability for who owns what. But at the end, what matters, whatever technology you are using, there's a relationship that it is very important that this technology has, and is the concept of value. So what is value, right? Let's start talking about value. So when we talk about gold, I told you that gold, it was not used as a trading technology because it was valuable per se by definition. It's because it has properties, chemical properties that makes it valuable when demanded, right? So with our current technology in the world, most of countries, we still use coins and we use paper money. And it happens that you can check very easily, right? Hopefully, if you just think a little bit about it, that we have a couple concepts about value in our current technology, which is nominal value and real value. What I mean with this is you have, say, a set of banknotes. One says 1, the other one says 5, 10, 150, I don't know, 500, 1,000, let's say. Depending on what country. For example, in Colombia, we have like 50 million, 10 million, right? So the nominal value, I mean, if you go and try to sell the money as just paper, well, probably all independent of the nominal value, the paper is worth the same, right? So while if you go to a store and you give, somebody tells you, okay, this your account now is $500 or 200, let's say, and you take a note that says 200, you pay with that and it's accepted. Well, because of trust, because the value of the paper is the same as probably it's just cents, right? So we are trusting in the relationship of this technology at their nominal level towards something that I want to bring to the table, which is purchase power. And this is the super key important project. Super key important concept that if you really want to understand GAUGECASH and its implications, you need to understand that always, this is true, always in any monetary system, as far as we know it, there's always trust and there's always purchase power. So purchase power is with that technology that is accepted by many, or at least by two people, how much can I buy of the things that I want to exchange, right? So in modern monetary policy, purchase power is a main topic. So let me just, so this lecture I will not talk about still monetary policy and central banking and so on, but I want just to say something about that. So banks, central banks, they have a central banks, they have a mandate, and this mandate has to do first with stability of prices, and job creation or maintenance, and is the lender of last resort. So this concept, the stability of prices, has to do with that, the relationship between the abstract number. I will explain right now what is that, the abstract number of a nominal value of a currency towards how much you can buy. In modern history, that's the problem of inflation. So inflation happens naturally as markets grow, especially when there are less supply than demand. So we already talked about that, right? Like if there's an asset and it's very demanded, then the price will go up. But for assets that are very, very important for everyday use, like food, housing, transportation, energy, what governments, they try to do is that these prices, if they go up in value, they go in a very stable pace up so that the economy can adjust and grow, okay? There are other, when you have an economy that is deflationary, that hasn't happened very often in our modern history, just Switzerland and Japan. It's a problem too, but I will not get into that. So some kind of inflation is, I mentioned last time, 2% is quite accepted as it's something between 2% all the way to 3% is what most of modern first world central banks are aiming at. But I mean, this is not a law. It's not set in stone. It's just something that by hand and experience, economists have come to learn that this level of inflation is, if it is stable, it shows growth, and if you can keep these assets that I told you that are basic for human life, then wealth can be created quite happily, let's say, quite easily. Not easily, I mean, what it's a good benchmark for growth. So now with these concepts laid down, let's learn about how modern economies work, and hopefully I can make clear that what I'm going to say is the way it is. There's always an abstract part of value. It's a topic that I want just to close, that people sometimes they don't have very clear. I mean, we all have a sense of that. I will explain. So let me put some examples. So let's talk about currencies. So I already explained value. I explained the technology that we use today, which is currencies, fiat currencies. We can have them in paper, in coins, or in our banks, or in digital systems like cards, but basically the same thing, okay? So far, hopefully GAUGECASH changed the story of this for good. So let's say, I will write the largest or most important currencies in the world just because they are the most traded ones, okay? So we have the USD as number one, meaning the US dollar. We have the euro as number second. We have the yen as third. Let me share with you, here I will show you this that you cannot see right now, but I will show you is paper, I mean, just a PDF from the Bank of International Settlements that you can check, because I will talk a little bit about where the index that we designed come from, which I am going ahead of myself, but like the number 3 is the pound, okay? So these are the most traded currencies right now in the world. They have been quite the same for the last 20 years or more. I mean, the year before the euro was the mark from Germany. So let's just state what every person that lives in a country have a sense of. Most people. So you have, let's say you have $1, €1, 1 yen, and 1 pound. All these are ones. Hopefully you understand. Or 10 or 100, it doesn't matter. But the question is, what can you buy with that money within your country, right? So let's put just an example. So they use something so you can have a sense of purchase power around the world. So you need to think of a good or service that is well spread around the world. So they use the Big Mac of the largest franchise in the world, which was McDonald's. So it became the Mac index. So the question was, how much of these ones is worth one Big Mac around the world? Now, for example, there's the iPhone index. That is the same question. How many of these ones do you need to pay in every part of the world to buy a certain model of the iPhone? And the answer is different, right? So let's say in the US, let's say, I will just talk about the most common defined iPhone by Apple. Let's say X model, doesn't matter. So let's say it's $800. But if you go to Europe, it's more expensive. Usually it's around, let's say, 800 euros. But you see, I'm saying it's more expensive, but like in terms of euros, it's the same. So how it can be that it's more expensive? Well, that depends on how much money do people earn in Europe. That's the minimum salary, let's say, and how many hours do you need to work in order to get the amount in order for you to pay an iPhone. And the other relationship is that the one that we're going to talk about is the relationship with the Forex market. So I would like to get these numbers accurate. Let me stop a little bit here and I'll come back. Well, I was not that wrong. So in the US it's $800. In Europe, well, Germany is 800. In France it's 810. In Japan is 119,800, and in the UK is 780 pounds. So here you can see very easily that this paper in different countries, their nominal value changes towards the same article or good that you want to buy. So coming back to central banks, is not very important, the number, meaning 800, 810, 779, and so on and so forth. I mean, we can go with the whole list of fiat currencies in the world. What matters is how much money people can earn, how stable are these prices over time, and if people can, with work, with a let's say basic job, can access basic goods, right? So this is important for GAUGECASH because the first part of the solution, which compared to all the other crypto projects, the majority of them that has trying to address the problem of stability or volatility that we learned from Bitcoin. They have pegged these simple digital tokens you can program in Ethereum in like 1 minute to the dollar somehow, okay? But nobody says that the dollar is the best one. The dollar is the most traded one, is the most trusted. But its relationship towards purchase power, it has been quite good in the last 50 years, much more better probably than many others, but not extraordinary, right? I mean, in the 70s, they suffered inflation, big inflation. Last year, they suffered big inflation, 8% per year. And they are the best, okay? So I will, I don't know if in this lecture or another one, when we review the charts of historical behavior of some currencies, I can show you specifically some cases in which you can see the problems of stability even in the major currencies. Remember, major currencies are these ones plus the Swiss franc, the Canadian dollar, and the Australian dollar. So in the modern world now, we have these concepts of a technology which is paper money that has a nominal value based on trust within their central bank, and what you can buy with that number within your country. Okay, but now since now many years, more or less, the world is trending towards being global. I mean, what I'm talking about is trading. We receive goods and services from all over the world. This was the case, I don't know, before 200 years ago. It was the case, but between more of regions. Now it's truly global, right? With the development of airplanes, for example. So what happens? We need a tool to connect these nominal values. And now that's where we have the Forex market. The Forex market is the largest financial market in the world, and it's easy to understand why. Because more than any other asset, what you need is cash to transact goods and services. That is the reason. In particular, the Euro USD market. So USD market, well, it's two things. So the Euro USD market is this combination of the relationship of the euro towards its market in terms of purchase power, stability, the things that I told you about the mandate of the central bank in Europe before 2002 when the euro was established. Well, all the countries in Europe, they have their own central banks, and the mandate were more or less the same. In America, in the US, Canada, Mexico, and Latin America, it has been kind of the same. Every country has their own central bank. and in the rest of the world so far, at least in third world countries upwards, kind of the same. So they care about their community or their country. Again, what they care about: stability of prices, job creation, to be the lender of last resort, keep inflation in check, and if there is any kind of financial crisis, try to help to go through it and manage it and bring things or bring stability again and produce growth, right? So, but when you bring another market, meaning now we have two markets. So the Central Bank of the US tried to do that to the US, and the Central Bank of Europe tried to do that to the Eurozone. But now there's a value that connects them. And that affects the economics of both sides. I will put some examples later. But this is the world that we live in. So now it becomes even more unstable, not stable, unstable, because there are international factors that affects the value of the currency, and that can produce needed decisions from central banking that are good for its country, but that are not good maybe for other industries. This is a whole topic. We can make almost a master's degree in central banking policy from each country, meaning a master's degree just specializing in the central bank in Japan, let's say. But I just want to give you a glimpse. So hopefully I share some ideas. For example, let's talk about the USD yen. Okay. So the yen, which we know Japan is a first world country for sure. The Central Bank of Japan always has been a different kind of mentality than Western central banking, in the sense that they understand, they are pretty smart guys. They understand very well their economy, and we know, we know, because it is very well known, that their economy depends a lot on exports. So what they try to do is that their currency is devaluated, although it's in the open markets. We will talk about that when the time comes about China, for example. But again, this is another whole lecture probably that I will give you about global monetary policy. But for now, let's talk just about Japan. So Japan historically mean after World War II, they tried to have their currency devaluated, meaning less valuable than other first world countries. Why? Because they want that their goods and services and mostly goods that are produced in Japan. For example, a very, very straightforward example is cars, the car industry. So you have Mazda, Honda, Toyota, Mitsubishi, all these brands that they are number one sellers in the US market. So if you go and try to buy a car in the US, you will find that these brands are cheaper than the German brands, for example. And one reason is because of the yen being devalued. So that gives them a economic advantage over other countries. But that has been their policy. I just make a parenthesis. Again, I don't want to get very, very deep, but like I said that they are an open market economy. So what does that mean is that the yen and is the forces of law and supply of the yen makes it valuable or not. And as you saw, the yen is the second most traded currency in the world. So how do they devalue it if there is a lot of demand of the yen? And the answer is through techniques by the central bank selling a lot of bonds. I mean, techniques that are quite sophisticated for the average person to grasp. But that's the way they do it, basically. Buying and selling bonds that has to do a lot with cash and interest rates. Okay. So what I just want to highlight from these last minutes is we have these technologies, meaning paper money, that they have some nominal value. The real value is trust given by the central bank and how this behaves towards the world and towards their country, meaning GDP production. And they need to confront, in terms of globalization, another market forces, which is how our currency is being bought or sold in the global markets, in the forex market. So they need to take into account that. Just to give you another example, just in the opposite direction of Japan is Switzerland. Switzerland for sure is a first world country as well. And Switzerland, the Swiss franc usually, historically, because people think that Switzerland is a very, very safe place, it's a sentiment, which in part is true. The Swiss franc has been always overvalued. But that brings a problem to the economy of Switzerland, which is they cannot do the same thing as Japan, right? They are a small country. If they produce they have a I forgot the word, sorry. If they manufacture cars within their country and they need to pay big salaries, big taxes, and so on. Even if they produce, let's say, the same car, the same Honda in Japan and the same Honda in Switzerland, the Honda in Switzerland is going to be more expensive because the reasons that I just mentioned. So they cannot produce that kind of goods because they are not competitive around the world. And that is a problem for them, okay? So that's why Switzerland produce many luxury goods, because with those, they can be competitive. Although not all the time, right? Because not everybody can produce. I mean, not the whole population of Switzerland can be producing luxury goods and services. So I will show you, for example, that in 2015, the Central Bank of Switzerland decided to devalue their currency for 8%, and that was done for the good of their current, of their country, their competitiveness of their country, but it was a mess in the Forex market. Or produced a mess in the Forex market. And that shows again that even in the currencies that are kept by very good central banking, the stability can change from policy from one day to the other. So again, stability of global now prices, which is a necessity of this 21st century, we need new tools, and GAUGECASH can provide a new tool to address this globalization and the stability of prices globally. Okay. And in the other, those are two examples of disruptions or guidance or philosophies of central banking in world first countries. But now, as I just briefly mentioned last time, we have the rest of the world, which usually we haven't done very well, and we have lost a lot of wealth, meaning wealth you put work and effort, but by geopolitical, political, government decisions, the loss of their currency is lost either by a big inflation or hyperinflation or debt crisis. So still a huge problem in this era that we pretend that we are solving with this project, and we are bringing a very important solution to the finance market. Okay. So now that we have this factory, sorry, I remember the word, car factory in Switzerland, right? It will not be as competitive as a factory in Japan. Anyways, now let's talk about GAUGECASH solution. Now that we have these concepts in our minds, we have all these projects that decided to peg their whatever mechanism, quite traditional, to a system in the blockchain, saying that this digital blockchain behavior that can move from one block to the other and can be established, the ownership by private keys and in a distributed system without the necessity of a central entity to check the double spending problem. And with Ethereum, not just that, but the execution of code done by a decentralized computation network. What I was saying is that we need a stable, decentralized electronic peer-to-peer cash system. That will be a true leap over of what already Bitcoin brought to the table as a currency, and Ether as well as a currency. Okay. But you need to put some conditions in order. If you want to achieve something that really brings something new to the table, in this case, the conditions are, we need to use the tools that represent and trust in these distributed systems that are coming to life. And as we learn, they have economics building them for the first time in history that are intrinsic to them, that bring incentives to work on blockchain. So the condition for us was, okay, let's use these economics and see if we can solve the main problem of stability. Just to be clear, it's just like with cars, right? Combustion engines, then we have hybrids, and then we have electric. But if you say electric, then you cannot use a combustion engine, right? That's backwards. If you want to be electric, truly electric, you just use electricity. Well, here is the same. And all these stable coins so far, all of them, they are backwards in that sense. They are using combustion engines in an electric world, okay? One way or the other. And GAUGECASH didn't want that. Specifically, in how do you back it up, which is the main topic, or the most important topic, and probably the most difficult to understand about this project. So, let's talk about the solution as is the topic of this lecture, and let's separate the solution with two different problems that each one deserves its own long explanation. Let's say here the GAUGECASH GAU index and gauge field GAUI. Let's call this backup. So let's start with the index. If we want to accomplish stability of prices, an index is a very, very good idea. Why? Because it's an industry that we well, not just, it has become an industry, actually huge industry, probably the largest private equity fund. I don't remember, I believe it's private. BlackRock is the largest fund in the world. Has grown through what is called ETFs, that somehow are indexes or constructions, mathematic constructions in the likes of an index. But okay, let's talk a little bit, just real quick, about the history of indexes. So the oldest index is the Dow Jones. It's called the Dow Jones Average Index. But the most established index in the world is the Standard & Poor's 500, which has its own history as well, that backs up all the way to 1906. And it was composed by 233 prices of the stocks of companies in the US. And the question there was, okay, These guys were some statisticians, and they wanted to understand how the U.S. economy, or try to measure the growth of the U.S. economy. So again, if you want to do that, then bring in the most important or the largest by market cap stocks into some kind of number, so that we have an idea of how is everything. If you bring a sample, right, of different industries or the majority of industries to this index, and you somehow measure what's going on there, you can have an idea of the whole economy. It serves as a glass, right, to have a look at the economy. But in the other hand, what Harry Markowitz, the Nobel Prize winner of 1990, was or is considered the father of modern theory of portfolio, discovered mathematically, is that by definition, when you put together, even in a simple, I will explain a little. I mean, we will get a little bit into math, very simple. If you make an average of some assets, it's almost true by definition that the volatility of the result of the average is less over time than any of its parts. And actually, this was later demonstrated by Markowitz, not just for that demonstration, but just, but for making a perfect model, what is called in mathematics an optimization model. So the question there was, okay, you can choose assets. So for example, in Standard & Poor's, what they try to do is to measure the economy. So then they need, or it is constructed with something that is called a weighted average, which is, I mean, basic mathematics, not that hard. I will just give a couple examples. And why a weighted average, right, for Standard & Poor's? Because it's not the same. Let's say if you have 500 companies, or at that time, 1906, 233. Later in the 50s became 500. If very large company, let's say the number one by market cap and revenue, well, brings more to the table, to the economy, than is the 500 company. That's why you need to give them different weights. Weights meaning in mathematics some kind of importance. So you have a better grasp of the economy in general. Okay. Then Markowitz. So we know what happened is that Standard & Poor's became an asset in itself in which you can invest, and it had succeeded. We can track the value. So basically, it has returned more or less 8% per year in average since the 1950s, when it looks like the one that we have now, which is the S&P 500. So we have two key aspects there to grasp. One is safer, So because you are diversifying your risk. And second, is more stable. In terms of investment, that's a trade-off, because if you want less risk, then you will have less return. But this is not always true. Once you have a portfolio, let's say, now I'll talk just a little bit about what Markowitz did. Is he asked the next question. He said, okay, because Standard & Poor's was just to measure, it was not at the beginning thought as an investment vehicle. But if you want to invest, so the question is, okay, can we choose different assets, study their past behavior, meaning their prices and volatility and volume, and optimize that we have the same risk, meaning the same volatility, and or less risk, let's say, with the same return, right? That was a question that Markowitz asked himself, and he became with a mathematical model that demonstrated that optimization can be perfect. Perfect in the sense that you can take historical data and you can optimize the portfolio. So that's why in the 90s, a lot of doctors in computer science and mathematicians and physicists were brought to Wall Street to make portfolios, because the math gets quite difficult for that and other things like derivatives, options, and a whole bunch of assets that to calculate all these things, it becomes quite hard. But anyways, that's I just from this part. I mean, I will give you some examples, but what I want to be very, very clear is that so we're looking, just to recap, Bitcoin, it's a new thing, it's a new asset class that has volatility. Then what we want is something, remember, a technology that is embedded in this new technology, blockchain, but that is stable, not volatile. So I am saying that a good idea is go back to the index industry and learn from them and apply some of the things that we have learned, even involving a Nobel Prize in economics. Okay. So what I'm saying, in other words, is that the idea is very, very well established. Now, what we did is a new kind of index with new kinds of properties, a new kind of mathematics. So in that sense, it brings the whole thing at a new level. Some aspects of it, I'm not talking about the whole index industry, I'm talking about specifically what we want to do with an index, that we want to be stable, that protects against inflation, hyperinflation, debt crisis, okay? For that purpose, just as Standard & Poor's, first, their initial purpose was to measure the US economy, then became an investment asset. Here is the same. We want first to bring the properties, the desired properties of stability of prices, that, as if you recall, this is a key mandate for central banking. So in our case, we're not going to try to solve now the problem of jobs or Um, uh, um, I was thinking in inflation, but we somehow are thinking in inflation and putting a solution. But let me make this very, very clear. We will talk about inflation maybe in another lecture, okay? Okay. So we want the stability of prices, which is a key component of central banking. Jobs is not a concern of this project, and to be the lender of that resort, we take on that as well. The backup solution actually solves that problem as becoming a hard monetary system. So just by design, by the architecture, we don't need to worry about that problem, meaning the bank run problem. It's solved, is there. So out of the, let's say, four main aspects of what a central bank is concerned, with GAUGECASH, we can address pretty well three of them. In a very, very cool way. So let's come back to, I mean, that was monetary policy a little bit. Let's come back to the index. So let's talk stability of prices. So I told you that there's this relationship here of these, of these ones, right? These ones, and its relationship to purchase power. So let's make this time I will not say anymore. Let's make an index. Or how do you do that? Well, it's quite easy. So let's put two values. Let's say we have the Euro USD. Suppose now this is equal to 1.07, and GBP USD. Suppose this is equal to 130. I don't know. I mean, I haven't checked exactly today, but like more or less. Okay. So just to give you a feel of what's going on here, let's make an average, simple average. So what do? You sum up these 107 plus 1.3, and you divide by 2. Okay. So this is 1016 more or less. Okay. Let's approximate, like in mathematics, approximation is like that. Okay. So I want to center now. We have here a new value. So let's remember our table. We have, let's call this the USD. We have a 1. On the euro, we have a 1. We have the yen, we have a 1. And now we have here a new thing. It's called new thing. Which is this number 1.16. And the question here is, remember, the question is, what is the value or price of the iPhone using this number. And hopefully it's straightforward to you that, yes, we can use that number to put a price to the iPhone, okay? Actually, it's a very good price. What I mean with good is that we have taken three central banking monetary policy in one: the US, the euro, and the pound. And remember that from the data of the Bank of International Settlements, these three are one of the most traded currencies in the world. And they are major currencies, meaning that in the last 50 years, they have more or less accomplished their mandate. So we can expect, and the key point here, this number will be more stable, meaning its volatility will be less than its components, just by mathematical definition. And here is the catch, here is the new concept that I want you to grasp. Now, this value, this number, is not a number in relation to any central bank. It's a decentralized value, right? We're bringing data, just like Standard & Poor's. Standard & Poor's was not, right now, for example, Standard & Poor's, the top ones are Microsoft, Apple, Alphabet, Google, the fund of Buffett, and so on. Tesla, I believe, is there as well, let's say. So all these, imagine, they are stocks that represent the economy of its company. But once you put it together in the Standard & Poor's average index, then it's a component, and it's a new thing that is more stable, it has diversification built in it. So maybe the returns are not as great, but the purpose is that you are evaluating the economy of the US and that you can put your money in an asset that is more stable. Here, we are looking for stability, not for making money. So this new thing basically is what we have called GAU. So GAU is 1.16, let's say. And it can be a 1 as well, okay? How do you do that? Well, because GAU is a relationship towards, remember we did here Euro USD, GBP USD. So the result in reality is 1.16 is GAU USD. So the Forex market helps us to translate the value within regions. So if you want the GAU to be the 1, you just go. So if you want USD GAU, this is 1 over 1.16. So is the reciprocal in Spanish. Sorry, I don't know the word in English. So basically, mathematically, is you have a currency X in relation to currency Y. This gives a value B. And if you want to have G in relation to currency X, this is just 1 over B. Okay. Sorry, probably you couldn't see this part. There it is. So then with this new number, when you make the relationship, and let's say you have the iPhone in the US. We said that the iPhone was worth $800. So the question is, how much Gauss will be worth now? Well, it will be equal to 800 over 1.16. Okay, let's say this is something on the ballpark of, let's say, I don't know, again, just an approximation, let's say 700. But what Gauss? So this number, now we have a new one in the world, meaning new one towards purchase power. But for the first time, in distributed systems, there has been some attempts in traditional finance that I am not an expert, but just again, more from the statistical point of view, to have some kind of let's call it global currency, but it is not exactly that. But this is a global currency that it has these properties. These properties will hold, meaning stability, that you can price goods and services around the world, and inherits monetary policy with real data from the world. Okay. So we can be sure that it is going to be more stable just because of mathematical definitions that are, again, well established, well proven. There's no question about it. Now, this is just a simpler example, but with this one, I just want to convey the basic idea of what is GAUGECASH, okay? So let's just make a summary. GAUGECASH, it's an index in which we have make an average, actually a weighted average. I will explain a little bit that. But what we're interested in understanding is that once we do an average from the Forex market, using this relationship to price goods and services from well-established central banking, we can come up with a new price. This price is going to be more stable. That's what we're looking for. The other aspect that we're looking is that it's not, this value is a new one. It's not the US, it's not the euro, it doesn't pertain to anyone. So for blockchain, that's very, very important. That's the decentralized part of the value. So now we have another nominal value with certain properties that we want. And let me get a little bit deeper. You don't need to totally understand this part, but I will go through it because there could be people that could have such a question. Is how is in reality the GAUGECASH index built? So, but the general idea is what you just saw, right? So at that level, that's a first good explanation, good enough, okay? But let's go deeper. So let's put here the real GAUGECASH index. Real, I mean, I will explain to you what are the real ingredients that when you go to our website, you see a price there, a value. What is that price coming from? Well, because we wanted to be, as I said, something that we feel proud against Bitcoin and against Ethereum and against the blockchain disruption community. We went all the way in trying to do the best we could in terms of all this knowledge. So we built a new kind of weighted average. So let me explain to you now what is a weighted average. It's quite simple. So now let's go back to our Forex market example. So we have the value of the Euro USD. GBP USD. I will not use the yen, although it is in the index, because the nominal value of the yen is quite different as a number, but by many orders of magnitude. So what we needed to do with the yen is a rescaling. Okay, I will not get that deep. Okay, but anyways, let's use just for Euro USD, Pound USD. Let's use the Swiss franc, CHF USD, and let's use the CAF, Canadian dollar USD. Okay. Another assumption that I'm making, I mean, if you are really a professional in this field, there could be the question, because the index is in relationship to the one of the USD. Probably this part many of you will not understand, but if someone out there is quite specialized enough, we can change the index towards, let's say, the one to be the one that we are using as a reference could be any one. It makes sense that it is the US dollar. It could be the euro, let's say, or other one. That changed the value, the nominal value of the index. Is that a problem? The answer is no, it's not a problem. In the extreme situation in which I will demonstrate later, which is part of the new mathematics of the index that we're coming or that we're bringing to this space, is what it matters is like, if let's suppose the whole world goes to hyperinflation, even the US dollar, then what matters is in the future that we have a value that keeps the same properties, meaning stability, and that makes sense economically to price goods and services. That's all what we need. Okay. So that part of in relation to the USD or the euro, let's say, if that decision needs to be taken, for information purpose that I will explain now, it's better to use the USD. Okay. If you want a further explanation, I mean, if you start to understand me, I mean, for a professional central governor or something like that, we have thought deeply about this. Okay, so it's not that it is going away from us, and it is not a problem at all. Okay, that was just a parenthesis. So what I was saying is like this USD is one that as a reference. So I explained to you that we can do the opposite, right? The USD Euro, USD GBP, that brings another value. And if you construct the weighted average with those values, the index will change. But that is not important. So we define the index as like I am writing it, okay? Well, let's come back a little. So what is a weighted average? A weighted average is you put some percentage of weight to certain value so that when you average that value, that that thing that you are putting more weight has a larger representation in the average, right? So let's say the Euro USD value is 1 point. Again, these are approximations. I don't have the values of today. They are not important. Let's say it's 0.8. The GBP, let's say, is 1.3. The Swiss franc, let's say, is 1.01. And the Canadian is 0.79. Okay. So how do the GAUGECASH real index, how do we decide who is first and who is second and who is third in the list, and what percentage? Well, the percentage, I didn't want to give just a random percentage. So that's why new mathematics is coming to the way. I will give you a glimpse of what is that, and not just it has another purpose as well. That's why we did that. But for this, I will just give you just a mathematical example, just for you to have a grasp of what is a weighted average. Okay, so let's say that you said, okay, I want my index to be maybe, for example, this just came to my mind. Maybe you can calculate in the data of the Bank of International Settlements what percentage of these currencies are being traded in the world. So let's say the euro is 50%. And let's say the pound is 30%. I'm just making up these numbers, okay? And let's say this one is 20%, and this is just 10%. Okay. So now let's calculate the weighted average. The weighted average will be 0.5 multiplied by 1.8 plus 0.3 multiplied by 1.3 plus 0.2 multiply 1.01 plus 0.1 multiply 179, all divided by 4. So let's say this number, I don't know. I don't know what is the result. So let's say this number is something like, it should be something like 1.10. Again, I will just repeat the concepts because this is very important. Now we have here a new value. This new value now inherits monetary policy of 5 countries: the Eurozone, the dollar, the pound, from England, from Switzerland, from Canada. But now you said, okay, we think it's better the policy of the Eurozone and the dollar. So that's why we gave them a weight of 50%. So this 1.10 inherits a 50% of weight of the monetary policy that it is done by these two currencies. And this is good because these are the most traded currencies in the world. I want just to mention something. Actually, there are assets that are traded as, I haven't checked in all the exchanges in the world, or in the largest, which is the New York Exchange. There are weighted average of currencies for hedge purposes. If you are hedging is important for many trading purposes. Just like with Bitcoin, we explained that the volatility is a problem. Well, with other currencies as well. We just said that the major currencies, they have done more or less good in terms of stability in the last 50 years. The rest of the world is pretty bad. So when you are dealing with a country that has problems with their currency, that is called the risk of the country, you better be hedged or you can lose everything. So there are some assets that has been built. Why am I saying this? Because they have been built like this, at this level of simpleness, okay? So someone says, okay, let's give 50% to the euro and 30% to the pound, just like that. I mean, realistically, you can check that. So it's quite simple. Not because it's simple, it's not useful, or what I'm not criticizing just because it's simple and it's bad. What I'm saying is that there's no explanation why 50% to the euro, although it makes sense that it is the one that needs more weight. But how much is a good question. So we ask ourselves that question. And because we didn't want to answer a dog question, meaning a dog like just what I'm criticizing, just like 50% just out of nowhere. So we created a new kind of weighted average. Okay. This part is I could make a whole, I don't know, maybe a course in this topic. or 20 lectures, I don't know how many. So in this part, I believe I will not go super deep. But as I said, you could skip this part. I have given you now 2 levels of understanding of a, I like to make these recaps, right? So we said that an index for decentralizing a value to price goods and services was a good idea. Why? Because by definition, mathematical definition, well established in finance, you bring the property of stability. I said to you that an average do that by definition. Then I said that most indexes, ETFs, and other assets that are out in the world, hedges for fiat currencies, are constructed using just simple weighted average. But I just told you. But here we're thinking many years ahead on what, if we want to be a world currency and have, let's say, a market share of 5% of the world, so GAUGECASH becomes well accepted. We wanted to make a leap in this aspect as well. So although the mathematics are not difficult, the explanation has to do a lot with monetary policy. So I will just tell you some facts, and I will give you an example of the mathematics from the point of view of what we wanted to accomplish. I will not go deeply in how actually they work, okay? And before doing that, I want to mention something. It's important to probably now to talk about a little bit of chaining. Because we said that we wanted to use what the good projects in blockchain are bringing as these disruptions, new ways of doing things. Chainlink plays a very important role for us here. We co-developed the implementation, not the theoretical part, but the implementation of the index, which from the point of view of blockchain, it was a well-known problem, the topic of an oracle. What is an oracle? Is data that you need from the world. Remember that now we have a computer, let's say Ethereum, and you need data to process some kind of computation, and you don't want a centralized party. So a very good example is for that is a bet. Okay, so suppose that you want to make a bet system. So you have a friend, and there's going to be a match, let's say a soccer match or whatever kind of sport. Well, you put some money down. Obviously, one person needs to go in favor of one team and the other one in favor of the other team. And there's some money. Well, let's talk about Ethereum in specific. So now, because we have a Turing complete language, we can program that very easily. with a if statement, right? If team X wins, you smart contract, this gives money, you give this money to this X person. If not, then to the other person. That's it. Okay. But we need an information there, the result of the match. And that result needs to be credible for those parties. So how do we make a decentralized system as well that nobody can tamper, that we can trust that or in order for the bet to be fair, that we're bringing the result correctly from the outer world to the blockchain, I mean. So there are, in the case of sports, you can think of reliable sources, right? For example, ESPN, Fox Sports, Google, you name it, how many you want. And then you can make a program, say, okay, please check after X time when the match finishes, all these websites, ESPN, Fox, blah, 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 and let's see if the result is the same. Once you check that, then you send the result to the contract, meaning the smart contract, or to the code of the bet. We can be sure that that is the correct answer. So now the bet is split. All this is automated. But you see, there's a problem there of making all these computations of the outer world to check that the data is correct. That is a problem in itself. So that is the oracle problem. And it has been addressed by computer scientists. Again, they know the problem since many years ago in distributed systems. But in blockchain, the number one project that has come up with a whole procedure on how to treat many kinds of data is Chainlink. They are the number one. And we partner with them because what we're doing is an oracle. So we are bringing data from the real world, and we need to be sure that that data is correct and that it cannot be tampered, and that it is now at the level of infrastructure, it can be decentralized and so on and so forth. Well, it took us 3 years almost, and we have accomplished that. It's very cool technology, what is behind the oracle of the GAUGECASH index. So that is the other aspect that needed to be addressed once we finished the theoretical part of the index. I'm saying right now this because for those who want to skip this part of the mathematics, you now have more or less the general information on how the GAUGECASH index is built upon, right? So we have Forex data, we have a new value with a new kind of weighted average based on the most traded currencies in the world. It was not easy because not easy what to find. So the least traded currencies in the world, given that they are in the open market, they are not very liquid, and that is difficult to find. So it was difficult to bring providers. But remember, as more currencies, fiat currencies, we wanted to tell the world that we were very global in terms of bringing monetary policy globally, and that the index represents the world. Actually is probably as much as we can do, anyone can do right now. And then how are we implementing the index is cutting edge technology, plus the mathematics are new kind of mathematics, okay? So all this work is to ensure the security of something that if it grows, trades billions of dollars, if not trillions, right? I mean, USDT Tether has been trading an average in the last 5 years of billions. So having a partner with Chainlink, it was very, very important for us in order to secure this new value, because a new thing. So we have put all the effort to make it very trustable. So there are many security checks so that the value can be used for pricing goods and services, and for storing your wealth within the boundaries of that value and its properties. So now let's let me give you let me have some real quick water here. Let me give you another property of this new mathematics. We did this because not because we wanted to be fancy or do unnecessary things. It was because, again, we wanted the value to be as decentralized as possible. So even factoring the weights with a decision with no explanation, what I'm saying is like, okay, the GAUGECASH team gave to the Euro USD a weight of 25%. Why, right? And I gave you an idea, right? Maybe we could check, okay, what is the percentage of the Euro USD worldwide? Maybe it's traded at 70%. So we give 70%, and now there's an explanation, an economical explanation that makes sense. But that is now and in the past. This project is for the future. So as you can read in the book of that I recommend you to do, so if you want to learn more of the fund manager Ray Dalio, it's called the New World Changing Order, I believe that's the name. At the end of the lecture, I will show you some things on the web. That will be one of them, so don't worry. There are cycles of the world reserve currencies. Right now, there's an emerging power, which is China. So how can we think of something better than just so we needed to think on the future, not in the present. So although it wouldn't be a good argument in the future, we don't know. So we wanted to take that away. So it is much better to give a mathematical explanation. With some properties that we know we can accomplish with mathematics that are pretty cool, but obviously this becomes a little bit harder to understand for most of people. But they are now implemented, so let me go straight forward and try to give you just an idea of what's going on, okay? So this is going to be, I will not, in this part, it will be very hard for me to try to give you analogies. So analogies for you to understand the equation. This part is just, I'll just go straight for it, meaning I'll just do the math, okay? And talk about math. Again, maybe you find this interesting, maybe you will not have a clue what I'm talking about. But I will not take any time to try to process any gap of knowledge, right? Because it's so far it's what I did, right? But you need to understand it or have a sense of how GAUGECASH works already. I did it. But there's a gap here between what I said to what I'm going to say now. There's a gap. So forgive me for that. Okay, so probably it's going to be faster what I'm going to say than all the apologies. Anyways, let me write this down. Say GAUGECASH math innovations. Well, let me write them down. One is temper proof. Weight given by a mathematical equation if if any of the fiat currencies suffer from loss of value, meaning hyperinflation. The index takes that into consideration. In the case of collapse of even the largest reserve currencies, the index will keep running pretty stable. And can be used for pricing goods and services. Maybe for hundreds of years. We're thinking that at least 200, 300 years even 500 years. I don't know. Maybe something else comes later as a better solution. But I think this is quite good already what we accomplished. I don't want to sound I want to be humble, let's say. I don't want to sound cocky. But at least I don't find, and obviously this could be an open question, but like, I believe our solution can hold forever as a hard monetary system. I'm talking about the index part. The backup part, that could be more likely to change. But this one, there's an extreme case, I'm talking about mathematically, in which we can demonstrate that it can work with a constant. And a constant, by definition, is always stable. So what I'm saying, again, this is for people that understands deep economic systems. What I'm saying is that we can have a discussion. So meaning, can this system hold forever? And the answer is yes, as a hard monetary system, and the backup is the one that could change. And there's a mathematical argument for that, but I will not explain that here, okay? I mean, the demonstration, which is not an equation. Demonstration is it's an economic demonstration of a hard monetary system. But again, I will not get into the full explanation. So you need to make a thought experiment, and then you need to understand the backing up. We will get into that later. And once you understand that pretty well, then we can argue that constant can make the whole trick. But right now, I just want to say that, or repeat probably myself, that this can be used for a long time, okay? It can surpasses reserve currencies for sure. So hopefully it happens. Maybe we will not, I'll not be here alive to see that, but hopefully it happens, because it's pretty good. I believe it can bring a lot of benefit from future generations. Anyways, so I just wrote down the characteristics. So how these characteristics looks into the equation? Well, they look like this. So an average in mathematics, well, you saw that is a sum. So we have so let's say X is equal to GAU. So X is equal to the sum of a weighted average here. Sorry. An average of currency 1 all the way to currency let's say I to J. And so this sum goes from I to J, plus another term here that, so here we have just an average. And this part is the new part. I have never seen any weighted, or I'm sorry, the index or ETF or something built like this. Again, I haven't reviewed how all indexes or ETFs are built in the world. We don't care. But I believe this one is, for the purpose that we are talking, we needed to accomplish that this part here, if this part goes to zero, mathematically, that's how it looks a hyperinflation. Why? Because I remember I told you that like the relationship between two currencies against, one currency against the US or the two currencies. Let's say we have let's put a real case, right? Argentinian peso, which is written like this. I will show you in another lecture the graph against the US dollar. So this relationship is telling you how many dollars do you need to give for one Argentinian peso, right? And the answer is now, 10 years ago, it was, let's say, 1. And now, today, this is 10 years ago. And now it is equal to 0.0000 something. So this is hyperinflation. But you can look at both ways. If you make a chart of this like this, USDC RES, then the chart will look like this, right? Meaning you need to pay a lot of pesos for $1. This is, let's say here, $1. Or the other way around, which is symmetrical, is it goes like this. It tends to 0. So you need to pay a lot of pesos for $1. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Here is, you need to pay few dollars for 1 Argentinian peso, okay, which is this part. So you can construct all the index thinking that how a hyperinflation looks like, meaning this part. So the values here, if the world happens to have a hyperinflation, the whole world, meaning all the currencies at the same time, well, this component of the sum will go to 0. So we don't want that, right? You understand now why, because that's what is real in this solution is some people in, let's say, Venezuela, they have money, this paper money, like all of us, and you go to the supermarket one day and you use, I don't know, 5 bolivars to pay 1 liter of milk. The next day you need 10, the next day you need 20. So you are not making that much more amount by work. So this is real. This is what happens in real life right now. So this is how it looks mathematically. So here we could bring well, here we could bring just a normal weighted average, right? As I mentioned before. But here, what we brought is a new way of making weights to these currencies. And to do so, we use a term in mathematics that has some properties, or an equation. The equation is the number e elevated to the minus x. So these equations, if you make a graph, it behaves like this. So this is 0, this is 1. And if you are able to incorporate the values of the weights in this x, then when they go to 0, what happens is this part will go to 0, but this part will not go to 0, because x equal to x to the 0 is 1. That's a mathematical property. So that's quite cool. I mean, this is basic mathematics in the sense of its properties. But applying this to this new kind of weighted average, we could resolve the problem of if the world changes let's say in the next 200, 300 years drastically, the index will keep behaving pretty well. And pretty well, again, probably I will need to explain a little bit more what is pretty well. There's a part in which I'll talk about inflation of the index that we are considered, and we put a compounding part of an interest rate within the index to counteract inflation. So, and altogether looks pretty well in the future, let's say, even if bad things happen to the fiat currencies in which we are basing the index right now. So this is the math. Basically, this is the new concept here. So the weights of the index are given by a formulation that looks like this. For those who understand, I will not give the exact formulation that is proprietary. But obviously, if needed in the future for professional developments and growth of the project with some counterparties, meaning, for example, if a government wants to adopt GAUGECASH and they want to check that what I'm saying is true, we can share that information with obviously protection of information. But this is the first time since we started the project that I have it going even this deep in the explanation. There could be someone out there now that with this explanation can derive not exactly the same index, but somehow an index with this new idea, if you grasp more or less what's going on or what are the purposes. But for that, you need to understand the economic purpose of the index, which I just wrote down here. And then how to overlap this with all the currencies that are listed Bank of International Settlements as currencies that are worldwide trade. So what I'm saying in other words is, although I'm sharing this information, it's quite difficult that anyone can come with the same index. Very, very, very unlikely. It's not easy. Well, maybe it will be a good experiment if someone tried to do an index using just this information, but it's not quite easy to relate these two things. So, but what is important is the properties that I just highlight. So this one is very, very important because it's not a zero, right? So hopefully you understand that if a whole world goes to a hyperinflation, the index converges in a very beautiful way to a value that actually it's in the ballpark of our current way of pricing goods and services worldwide, so that we keep doing that. That's an extreme case. We believe that that is very unlikely to happen in the sense of the major currencies, but in the sense of the non-major currencies, it has been happening all the time. So you can check the historical price behavior of the index all the way to 2002 with all these currencies included. And we will talk about now in front of your eyes, you will see the power of this equation, right? So we can compare the Argentinian peso against the index. We can compare the euro against the index. We can compare the Japanese yen against the index, and you will see the power of it, okay? So it accomplished what we want. Okay. So for this part, the index, I believe I cover everything that I wanted to cover. And the other part is going to be, again, this is just a number with in relation to purchase power. And this is the part that separates us. I mean, this already the index takes us away from all the crypto projects out there that are pegging to some kind of traditional asset, dollars, euros, gold. This is a new way, a new form that makes a lot of sense from the monetary policy worldwide point of view going forward. But most important and most, I guess, disruptive is the way in which we can back it up. And that is the concept of a hard monetary system that I need to explain to you. This is probably the most abstract part of the project. Is probably the most difficult to grasp, so I'll make my best effort to convey the general ideas, and hopefully you can get a good sense that you can trust on the bank, so that GAUGECASH solves the bank run problem at its roots, right? So you don't need to worry about what just happened in the US, in California, and Ukraine as well, with the war, people going to the bank and getting to get their cash and so on. This solves that for good. I will explain how, okay? Let's continue with this lecture number 3. And now let's start talking about, now that we have explained the index and that we have this number that is good to price goods and services because inherits monetary policy, and that means it has a measure of the world's relationship towards purchase power, which is the part that matters for this whole project. But it's just a number. And how can we back it up in a decentralized way? So let me just go here and let's talk about this. How to back up GAUGECASH. And this is the most important concept of the whole project, where the innovation really separates us from all the projects out there. So let's just talk in general, as what I have seen at least. What we are not. We are not a token pegged to the US dollar and there's no way to check funding. Just like example, USDT, USDC, True USD, Binance, I don't know how do they put it, USD, and so on and so forth. What I mean checking is not, well, there's two parts of checking. Checking means in traditional markets, for example, if you are a company that have a security in it's a New York exchange, you have very well-established companies that just by reputation, meaning you need to trust them, they check that what the company is doing is correct. How do they do that? Well, people go physically and they check balance sheets, revenues, invoices, expenses, and so on and so forth. And then they establish that everything that the company has said, meaning publicly, can be trusted by a third party. Examples of these companies, maybe you have heard of them: Deloitte, KPMG, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and Ernst & Young, and probably there's many others, but at least in the Western world, these are the largest ones. So again, it's a matter of trust. What I mean is, now we have a tool, which is the blockchain in itself, to show that the funds are there. And none of these projects have that. So that's what I mean with checking. Maybe, and sometimes because they are not public companies, so they are not, they don't have the obligation to show audits of their, or reports of their funding. So that's the tricky part. But anyways, it is what it is. So we are not that. What we are going, what the protocol does is, through its smart contracts, you can check that the funding that is backing up the value of GAUGECASH is at the level of transparency of the protocol at the level of smart contracts, meaning code. But that's not the whole story, right? And so before I go to that, I am not an expert in DAI, for example, DAI. Basically, they have a protocol. That one is, I believe, is in the blockchain. I haven't checked it myself, but I have read it a little bit. Why I don't read it thoroughly? Because I don't care about other projects. I just care about what we are doing. In the sense of stable coins. So DAI is an over-collateralized token. So at the level of the smart contracts, what is holding is always a relationship. I believe it's 3-to-1. But the problem again of that is that maybe over collateralization. So why do they over collateralize? Because of volatility of the backing up of the decentralized token they are using to backing it up. If you use stable coins, then you have the same problem of the above. But the other problem that DAI has is respect to the US dollar. Again, the one of the US dollar, as I already mentioned, that one going forward, thinking differently out of the box, which is everything about these systems, or at least we want to bring something new and better, right? Because it's not just about bringing things new. We need to do much more better of what we have. So DAI has that problem. So, but I would say it's a good attempt at least, because again, pegging to the one of the US dollar is not a bad idea, right? But how do you protect? It's that even that is over collateralized in heavy volatility markets, as I have mentioned, Bitcoin, which still is the leading crypto project out there, suffers from phases till now of plus and minus 80% in terms of volatility. So that's a lot. So it's very hard to control over collateralization if it even is 3-to-1, because 80% means more than 3-to-1 relationship, right? 80% is 1 to 5. And that is Bitcoin. If we think about Solana, for example, that was I believe at its high was 256 and then came down all the way to 90. Then we have 95%. So that is a relationship of 20 to 1. So that's so still very dangerous to do that. And so again, we are not this. And the other one that they came about, I don't know if DAI exactly uses that mechanism for the pegging, which is AMAs, automated market makers. Okay, sorry. And what is that? Well, is a technique that Uniswap uses. Is an algorithmic way of established by the laws of supply and demand, so that the value can be there. It's not very important for our case now, but again, Terra Luna, I believe, has this protocol, and it failed. And it failed. Why? I don't know exactly the reasons. Maybe they were doing too much leverage. Maybe didn't have to do anything with the market making part, because those mathematics are quite well done. I mean, but what I want to say is basically is not because they are well done. The risk of a automated market making is that it can deviate from the price. It has a probability of doing so depending on what's going on in the market, but from the get-going, the creation of these systems, nobody said that it will hold the pegging. Hopefully, I am explaining myself. So it was not a fact of the point of view of the development of the mathematics. So it's not a safe asset in that sense. And the other one is that, again, just to talk about Terra Luna, it was again pegged to the US dollar. So in that sense, all of them are traditional. And if it is pegged to the euro, well, it's the same problem, probably even worse. If it is pegged to gold, we will talk more about gold later, not today, maybe in a future lecture. Gold has a lot of volatility towards purchase power. So again, nobody says that an stable way of managing stability of prices. And you can read a little bit of history about that when the Bretton Woods Agreement came by. The reason is it was that the US cannot hold that peg anymore. Anyways, so then what's the hope, right? And that's the question that we make to ourselves. What's the hope? Can we do it? Can we back up in a decentralized way a value? And the answer is, I already gave the answer to you, and the answer is yes, but I already gave you a hint of how that looks like. And what I want to establish is that it cannot be by definition something set in stone in terms of managing the protocol in the real world. And I'll explain what I mean with that. So what I mean is that it needs a little bit of management. So although everything is transparent in the code, the management of the system until it reaches equilibrium needs measure inputs so that we direct the mechanism towards the goal. Okay. So that what I will establish right now is just so hopefully I established that the conceptual, the abstract part, the theoretical part, you are super sure that works. Okay. In the real world, it works, of course. So let me just give you an example. Sorry, but I'll take an example because it's probably the topics that I manage better to explain, and I believe it make quite sense to do so from my expertise. So let's talk about a little bit, just very simple, the topic of thermodynamics. So what is thermodynamics? Well, is the physical equations that explains how heat behaves. And so what is heat, and how it behaves. Let's leave it like that, okay? So the combustion engine is an implementation of thermodynamics with the steam engine first and then the combustion engine. And there was I'm talking about a little bit about history. There was Carnoustie came with the development of the theoretical part in which he could calculate what was needed if we wanted a perfect combustion engine or thermodynamic machine, right? And he came to some conclusions that perfect efficiency in the real world, it was just impossible. But what I want to highlight of this example is three principles. One, we can develop a theoretical idea that is true. Second, we can understand very well what are sometimes their limits. And third, and this is the other part of what I wanted to mention, is we have cars, we have trains, we have airplanes, we have all these things that use thermodynamics as at its core. So we can use them. So what I mean is, for sure they need some kind of management. But what I mean management is not like you need a mechanic every morning for you to turn on your car, right? We can automate, or now we have automated these machines many, many years ago. But sometimes you need to get some check-ins, some maintenance here and there. And let's say if you want to run a combustion engine for a different application, we talked about this before, let's say a Formula One car, then you need to tune the machine differently, right? If you want to get more efficiency, well, that's another technology effort that you need to put in order to achieve those. So hopefully I am getting my example understandable, in which here what I'm going to establish here is that the theoretical part, just like thermodynamics, it works, it's true, just like the law of supply and demand and stuff like that, right? So if you have specific questions about, oh, there could be this detail that Manuel is forgiving in the real world, if this can happen. Well, no, we have thought of those. As far as we have studied and checked, all the problems for making the real car, the real combustion engine, for this purpose of the world's first decentralized monetary system, with all the implications at the level of implementing into the blockchain, the smart contracts, the management, everything is checked. So we're pretty sure that it works. And I'll talk more about that probably in lecture number 4. In lecture number 4, I'll show you. It will be these same topics, meaning gauge cash and gauge fill, from another point of view. The more now I will explain to you the machine. Okay, that is all the pieces that are working together. So this lecture number 3, I will just give you the theoretical part, okay? And then I'll explain in lecture number 4 how we have implemented the solution, and so you can be sure that you can trust on it, right? But what I am advancing is that it has an ignition point in which it will become a self-reinforcing economic system, and basically once that ignition, we can throw the keys and let the system grow by itself, and it's pretty cool. Will be pretty cool to see that part. But I am going getting ahead of myself, so let me come back. So remember I told you about this conceptual mental experiment, thought experiment in physics, they call it. If what happened, or what will be the value of Bitcoin if you throw all the money that is available in the world. So now we have learned that we have a better thing to throw that money to, which is Ethereum. Ethereum. So I will just make the calculation again, but now with Ethereum. Again, this is just for let's say a toy model, so that you get the principle of what is possible. It doesn't mean we are going to do it that way exactly. And there are some reasons about it, okay? But Ethereum is a very, very good example because now Ethereum has some better properties that we're looking for a decentralized system. First of all, let me just mention some of them compared to Bitcoin, right? So we said that it's a better development because Bitcoin, it was just an electric peer-to-peer cash system, and Ethereum is the world's first decentralized computer. The proof of work, which now after last year, probably happened, or we have talking about distributed systems and blockchain technology, probably we have the third after the inception of Bitcoin, then the launching of Ethereum. Probably, at least from my point of view and many other experts, we believe that what happened last year, so changing proof of work to proof of stake in Ethereum, for us is the third most important achievement as a project. It was very, very hard, very, very difficult, and it happened flawlessly. So big applause for all those developers. It was quite difficult to do. So proof of work, when Ethereum started, he wanted to use that consensus mechanism just because of decentralization, and it used a better way to decentralize a cryptographic hash mechanism that was different from Bitcoin's, in the sense that Bitcoin became basically miners. Again, if you want to know more about this, you can read the book of crypto assets. So I will not give some backup explanation about this. So miners, once they started to understand the mechanism of Bitcoin, they start in China mainly in China, producing machines, meaning computers, that they specifically were designed to be as efficient as possible to find the private, the hashing of blocks in the network. So now with that mechanism, what happened is we got a little bit of, or a lot, I don't know, depends on what era did you study. Mining pools became impossible to access by a normal computer. So basically you needed to build a factory. Maybe in YouTube you can check these days, I don't know, a documentary or something of a visit to a Bitcoin factory mining, and they cost a lot of money. And it's because of, in the case of Bitcoin, Bitcoin will be always proof of work until it shuts down, probably. I don't know if that will happen, and it requires a lot of electricity. So Vitalik Buterin, when developing Ethereum, he thought about that, and he didn't want that. He wanted to improve that the protocol was not able to be centralized in that sense, so he changed the hash mechanism. So far, I'll show the data for the lecture number 4. We'll see where we at in terms of decentralization, but Ethereum is pretty good. So that is a key aspect from the economics of a system in which we want to back up your money, your wealth, in something that is decentralized. Okay. for security reasons. So that's why Ethereum is a very, very good example that we can use. But now it runs in proof of stake, so that's another accomplishment because now we don't have problems of electricity, and it's working pretty good. So proof of stake is more efficient, and it was the next step. The next step it was thought from the beginning, and it happened last year. So if you want to read more about that, it was pretty cool to see it happen and all the nodes getting encompassed to this new consensus mechanism. So I'll check what is the state of decentralization with data for the next lecture. So now we have this more mature system, this global distributed system with a lot of valuable information and a lot of power, computational power to do many, many things. And so let's recap the economics that I explained to you in lecture number 2, which is by simplicity that we have a graph like this, time and quantity. This is ether, and it will go like this and tends to 0. Okay. So by practical means, it has an scarce issuance model built in it. So let's take now, again, I'll show this data, lecture number 4. So everything that I am mentioned right now, I will make a whole lecture on showing that everything that I'm saying is backed up by data. So by the UBS wealth report, and the GDP World Bank measurement, we saw that this one I told you is around 340 trillion. This one is less, GDP worldwide is around 90 trillion. If you want, you can put it to 100 trillion, it doesn't matter. So, well, this is larger than this one. So here is the key aspect, okay? What happens if you throw all the money, and I'll be precise again, there's not by professional central banking people, not all monies measure the same way. So there are, if I remember well, at least 5 measurements, M1, M2, M3, M4, and M5. I will show those to you again in the next lecture, what it means. So basically it's the difference between cash and then other assets that are quite liquid, and then other ones that are less liquid, and so on and so forth, until you get to M5, in which you have valuable things, but some of them are not that liquid. Okay, so meaning exchanging, if you are in a necessity, exchanging them for cash is not immediate, it takes time. So let's take the measurement of UBS, and let's do exactly what we did with Bitcoin. So we have all this value, let's call it value. And the first question is, let's use Ethereum as a means of recording. Let's probably like this word, recording all this value. Can that be possible? And the answer is yes. So what would be the value of Ether, 1 Ether, right? So it's quite simple. Right now, there's more or less 120, so circulating supply, it's equal to 120 million. So 1 Ether will be equal to 340 trillion divided by 120 million, right? That will be it. And I will equal this to a constant plus the annual. Get this down a little bit. Because the annual inflation, let's say, or growth, other way to see it is growth in GDP per year. Why am I using a constant? Well, because these things are going to change, but they are going to change. So again, this is going to be the approximation always. But the point is that they are going to change in a very small percentage. Hopefully you understand why. Because if we have a year, let's say 2024, and we grow globally 2%, we throw that money into Ethereum. So there's only that extra money that is created based on well, in GDP, based on GDP, based on the measurement of UBS, which is going to be less, because GDP is the thing that moves our economy. So whatever measurement you want to take, the point is, it's a small amount. And then you don't need to worry anymore by, let's say, this is true for Ethereum. If you need to price goods and services that are very, very, very cheap, even in whatever part of the world, then what Vitalik did is, if you remember, in Bitcoin, the smallest amount in which you can divide a Bitcoin is 1 Satoshi, which equals 1 per 10 to the minus 8 BTC, all BTC. And in Ethereum, it's called WE, it's equal to 1 per 10 to the minus 18 Ether. So whatever is the value of 1 Ether, then you can divide that by 18 decimals if you want, in order to, or multiply, whatever, depends on how are we speaking. So basically you have, for the foreseeable future, probably we can calculate, let's say, the question will be, okay, if we grow at 2% in the last 500 years, then you can multiply compounding rate for all these years using the 100 trillion, you will get a number. And that number, again, you can divide it by, let's say, 240 million, the total circulating supply in the future of Ethereum. That will give you a constant, or very close to a constant. Well, yeah, constant. And you will see that there's enough decimals to price in ways. Let's say, if you go to the store and want to buy some gum, you can directly value in ways. Let's say a piece of gum will cost you, I don't know, in 500 years, maybe 3 weeks. So the point is that there is enough decimals so that we can exchange things that have small values or micro values in some parts of the world. From the point of view of economics, are called like that, right? So that is not a problem anymore. And obviously, we are just making a thought experiment, as we said, with Ethereum. And in 500 years, the question is, where is human race going to be? Well, there's 3 answers for that, more or less, of what we are now, much more advanced, or we will destroy ourselves. So let's suppose the good scenario in which we figure out the pace in which we have grown in the last 200 years in technology, and it seems that we go faster and faster and faster. And well, it will be, maybe we have developed already, I mean, and we just to make for the sake of having a little bit of fun, but like quantum computers with artificial intelligence. So how a blockchain could look like that, we don't know, right? But history has shown that things get better if we want them to be better. So in that sense, I'm just giving you a sense that this is now, this is possible now. So we can assume that it is going to be actually even easier in the future, maybe in our lifetime. The question is how our blockchains are going to be in 30 years from now. Well, that was a question that in the age of the tech boom from 2000, let's say from the 90s to the 2000s, and then the 2000s from now, has changed dramatically. So we expect dramatic changes as well. So again, if GAUGECASH is success in the concept, which is the most important thing, this concept that a blockchain infrastructure with all its value can hold the whole, are different words, can hold the total amount of value that there is in the world for the first time in a decentralized system, which by those properties make it very safe. right? Again, if you see them a piece, what are we talking about? Infrastructure, right? Well, you can download in computers pieces of code that they have the information of all the blockchain, right? So anyone can have a copy, and that copy represents the whole value. So that's the key aspect of it. So let's remember what happens with one of the problems. So one problem was, well, the main problem is volatility. So the problem that the stable coins addresses are volatility. But if we encounter a market like this in equilibrium, meaning you throw a lot of money and there's not much to add, then volatility is gone by definition. So this problem does not exist. So GAUGECAsh solves the problem by becoming a machine that what it does is we have a value here, say, I just my apologies because my skills of drawing are worse than probably a kid of 5 years old. So I'm trying to do my best in terms of drawing. I'm pretty bad. So you have, let's say, a person wants 1 GAU. So in exchange, that person needs to, I mean, this is true if you open the wallet, right? You need to give USDT. Let's not worry right now for the specific mechanism here. It can be internally, this is changing Matic for now. This is a whole other lecture, okay? So don't worry if it is USDT, Matic, or Ethereum, or Link, or, okay? The point is, right now we're using USDT, which we don't like USDT, right? But like, and the whole purpose is to translate the whole system to a decentralized asset that has a scarcity built in itself, which is the case of Ether, and Matic, the layer in which we are running, which is the network of Polygon. Okay. So let me, for not making any confusion, let me sometimes I get complicated in my mind. So let's use the same example with it. So this is true for the system that is embedded in the smart contracts of GAUGECAsh. So one person wants 1 GAU, they need to exchange at the smart contract level, meaning to the network, 1 Ethereum for the relationship, right? Not 1%, some level of Ethereum. And so if many people let's say, start to using GAU, they will start demanding Ethereum. And in the other hand, they will be throwing Ethereum to these smart contracts that we have created that are locked. Meaning locked to what? To use for other things, unless that same person goes back and exchange Ethereum for GAU again, right? Because we know that adoption is not going to come from one day to the next. So, but the expectation is the ignition part of the system is like once, so there are, let's say, there are two scenarios here. Well, let me, sorry, I'm going to be very slow and I'm going to repeat a lot of what's going on here because this is, again, the most important aspect of the project. I will repeat. So we have created a number. This number has some properties from the world monetary policy. Is very stable, counteracts inflation, it cannot hyperinflate. And at the level in which we can process information by blockchain properties, we demand a condition, which is this number needs to be, and this number cannot be temper, is temper-proof, right? Nobody can touch it. That's why we partnered with Chainlink so hardly, so that the whole decentralized Oracle developments that are quite important are covered. This is not just a level of decentralizing nodes or computers, right? Like having the information in different parts. Chainlink uses, and there are more Oracle mechanisms at the level of computer science. What I want to explain, this is very technical. There are hardcore mechanisms of decentralization that are well understood in computer science. Okay. So these are demanded for what we're doing. So we have an oracle that is the GAUGECASH fee. This is a number that represents monetary policy that is have a very, very good sense going forward in the future of pricing goods and services worldwide. And the condition is that this number is being exchanged when demanded for what you want GAUGECASH, for two things. The first thing is you want to use it for buying a good service. The other thing is, like, suppose that you're in Latin America and you don't want to expose yourself, meaning you want to hedge your cash to hyperinflation or inflation. So you acquire GAUGECASH and you save it. Well, when the process of the world is starting to accept GAUGECASH in exchange for goods and services, then that money doesn't go back. Again, with the condition of growth, okay? So if people start using this as cash, meaning you buy goods and services, and the people who receive the money, suppose Apple or a big company or a small company, it doesn't matter, but let's suppose it's a big company, Apple. Apple start using GAUGECASH and they sell you, for the first time, they can price a phone at the same number worldwide. That's a very beautiful aspect of this project. Second, you can buy it very easily. Third, you get it, right? You get the good. But then what we need is that Apple pay its people with GAUGECASH because they can go in the stores and buy goods and services with GAUGECASH and so on and so forth. Hopefully you understand that. They don't go back to fiat. We don't expect this to happen overnight. But that's the way cash works. We're not expecting something that never has happened in history, right? So it's the same that central banks, they do. They power their certain amount of bills per year so that people can do what I'm just saying, okay? So people transact with this cash. Well, this is the total demanded cash for exchanging goods and services. And actually, we have never measured this amount. And with this technology, we can measure. Meaning, in reality, how much money, let's call it printed money. I'm talking about GAUGECASH. In blockchain words will be minted money. But it's not minted by us, it's minted by demand in exchange for Ethereum in the example that we're using. So these things start to happen. That was the hope of Bitcoin, that you can go and pay with Bitcoin. The problem again with Bitcoin right now is volatility. GAUGECASH doesn't have that problem. But it demands in the condition, in the back, let's say, that for you to use this stable, decentralized value, you need to give in exchange this other asset that represents a blockchain that is scarce, which in this case, we're using the example of Ethereum. So if that demand starts to happen around the world, well, guess what? Because of the loss of supply and demand, the price of Ether needs, by definition, to go up. Right? I will repeat this. What we are making is a system in which the conditions, economic conditions, blockchain conditions, in which all this technology is based upon, you demand to use a free service, certain value that has certain properties in exchange for an asset that has a scarcity built in it. And that demand makes this scarce system goes, by definition, by the loss of supply and demand, goes up in value. So that's the first well, when people ask me, how are you giving liquidity to GAUGECASH? Well, the first answer, or part of the answer, is you are giving liquidity to yourself, right? Because you are giving something that already has value. In this part, exchanging GAU per Ether, Ether per GAU. But once GAU starts to be used more and more and more for trading or a store of value, it means that demands go up, and then the value of Ether starts to go up. I am thinking, so let me probably in this lecture number 3, because you can have the obvious question, which I don't think that we haven't thought it, right? Well, what happens if the value of Ether in this adoption stage. Let's graph what the adoption stages or scenarios can be. Let's say we can have a scenario of adoption. So this is quantity of what, GAU versus time. Let's make here. So one, it can be very slow, right? Something like this. Another one can be quantity. It can be more like maybe it is like this and then jumps, and maybe something like this and then jumps. Another can be, it is more usual that when things start working as a service, historically the normal behavior is exponential. It goes like this and then stabilizes. But we don't know, right? But it doesn't matter. So the question is, what happens here when the demand is not good enough and we can risk the system with the volatility? We are choosing Ethereum because Ethereum is volatile, right? Well, that's the part in which we demand some management, and the way we do it is hedging, because we understand very well the behavior of the index. You can see it. I mean, first, we design it. It's by design. Second, you can see how it works in the chart so far, which I'll explain to you in future lectures in our website. There's a design mechanism, behavioral mechanism of the index. So we know what is going to be worth against the most stable assets in the foreseeable future. So we can use that information to set up the conditions of managing until we measure the growth in adoption, and then we can switch to flip to the decentralized, in which we know that the value is going to start pushing, and by demand, the value up. Okay. So let's put a simple example, a couple examples, I guess. Let's talk about first, just to recap the main point. The main point is that we have, for the first time, something with some kind of properties, just like we talk about, well, we will talk later, but like, remember when we talk about gold, that gold has certain chemical properties. Well, now this blockchain asset class has some economic properties that make it very, very suitable for storing the whole value of the world, better than anything that we have found on the earth or we have been created in history. Why? Because it's very easy. It's just a piece of information in whatever computer anyone can have I was going to say in their houses, but what I meant is they can own, they can download, right? So this information can be replicated in millions of computers around the world. So that property makes it very suitable for storing the value of the world, right? The information of who owns what, basically that will be the abstract definition of it. And because it's scarce, by demanding the way we're constructing the whole system, the value will go up. Meaning you can think of GAUGECASH as a machine that is pumping in fiat currency into blockchain. Basically, that's it. But let's put a couple examples, as I said, about this behavior that first the basic behavior, just to emphasize, with an auction. Okay, so an auction is this item that usually is something that is one of 1 or 1 of 10, or there are just few available. Let's not talk about charity options, okay? Because those ones are for another purpose. Well, a real auction, there are many examples, and that's why I'm putting this one. You may be familiar with whatever collectible you like. So let's say something that probably anyone could understand. Let's say that we have a Van Gogh painting coming out for sale. So we found a new one because, as you know, most of them are at the museum in Amsterdam. Right? Or suppose that the Museum of Amsterdam say, okay, let's sell one for any private person. Let's auction it because we don't know what is the price. Meaning, one answer could be unvaluable, but then nobody could buy it, right? If it is unvaluable. So let's make an auction to find that that's one of the mechanisms in which in finance there's something that is a term, again, very, very well established, which is price discovery. So let's discover what is the price. And there's a now famous program here in the US. Well, I don't live in the US, but it's accessible to the Western world, which is by History Channel, The Price of History, it's called. It's a pawn store, right? So basically, you see all these mechanisms of supply and demand working there all the time. Okay, let's go back to our example. And in our example, we have one painting, a Van Gogh painting. So the painting goes to auction, and because there's just one, the question is, what is going to be the price? The answer is very, very simple. If the demand is large, it's going to be very, very expensive. If the demand is low, it's going to be less expensive. That's it. And you can think of any one that you like. And that can be modeled mathematically. Why? Again, because even if it is a Van Gogh, you can start looking for, so not all the people can first, let's suppose that the minimum value, you start thinking and you say, okay, this will not go for less than 10 million. So how many people in the world has 10 million to spend in a painting? Well, you take a huge percentage of us, right? And then you can say, okay, who could be interested in paintings or this kind of collectibles? Well, there's a market, that size market, that I'm sure many experts in the field can tell you, right? Maybe I don't know, you can look for the amount of galleries that they sell art at that level, meaning 10 million pieces of. in the world, and they have certain amount of clients. So let's say you come with a number, I don't know, 1 million people. And now with the internet, okay, let's put it that you calculate that there will be interest by 10 million people in the world. So then you can start making some assumptions and saying, okay, the prices are going to start coming in, right? 11, 12, 13, 14. But in the other hand, without any calculation, you can think a top value, right? So this could not go more, I mean, it could go, but like it's very unlikely to go, let's say, for 1 billion. Why? Because there are few people in the world that can spend that kind of money in just one thing, just because of that reason. So it's the same logic of the bottom aspect to the top aspect. So you see, you can be constrained. So and then with that range, right? You can start approximating better and better what will be the value of the cell. And just to give you another well understood system in which you can actually do an experiment and approximate the value is by let's say that you tell people that what happens if you want to buy so the same thing, but these people doesn't have the money, but like you use them and you tell them that you maybe what happened if you had the money. Okay, so let's run the auction with fake money with real people, and then you can find some certain level of rationality and certain level of irrationality, but then you can put that limit level. The limit is 1 billion. So you will find the behavior of the auction, and then you can process that information and be pretty precise on the value that the Van Gogh can be sold. But apart from having fun, I guess, with this example is let's not forget something, which is we're given, when we start getting our mind into this experiment or thought experiment, we are for sure that the Van Gogh is going to go up in value, right? That's for sure. I will put another example. Let's think about a violin or an instrument made by Stradivarius. Just by demand, the price will go up. Okay. So what I'm saying to you is that the economics in which GAUGECASH is based are that certain, right? So there's a necessity in the world, not just in the crypto market, of substituting centralized stablecoin, but GAUGECASH is a solution for a real big problem in the world. So once people get it, hopefully they start demanding, and we can be sure that the market size is good enough to push the price up of the decentralized in which we are backing up the system. But that's just the first mechanism. The second mechanism is we have people here that wants a GAU. They want a GAU. They are willing to give Ether, let's say. And the purpose is buying goods or saving. So that is the free service of GAUGECASH. So this is GAUGECASH. When I say GAUGECASH, I mean GAU. But we have the second token, and the second token is GaugeField. So GaugeField, at the level again at the level of smart contracts, is doing the same thing. So we have now GaugeField. There are just 500 million, and the purpose is someone that starting with us and the people that already invested in this project, they are betting that what we are doing is going to be demanded. So there's for the same system, so this is GAU, and this is GAUE. These people have another interest. The other interest is, okay, I'm willing to exchange GAUE and give, let's say, Ethereum here. But here we have the same protocol. So this GAUE at the level of the protocol is just wrapping Ether. Wrapping Ether. So that again provides liquidity to this system. Okay. So this one here is a condition of the protocol. This one here, the GAUE, it will go to a market when listed of traders, investors, speculators, and what we are assuring to them is that because GAU is going to wrap Ether and the demand of GAU starts growing, that we already explained that the price will go up, then for sure the price of GAU it needs to go up at the level of the protocol. Okay? At the level of the free market, it will start going up as well. Why? Because there's value now that people can see, okay, how much this system can grow. This is nothing new, okay? What I'm just explaining, I will put another example, is the way securities work. The company goes out there, they ask people, let's say to the New York Exchange, they give stocks in exchange for cash, so they can build what they need to build. And then the stocks in the markets are exchanging if the company is doing what it's supposed to do, and if there is revenue. So that will be the similarity of, let's say, the protocol. The protocol is growing. It has becoming more valuable. Why are we becoming more valuable? Because we're exchanging 1 GAU per Ether. So there's value in there, real value, actually cash. You can measure it like that directly. And the other market say, okay, this is growing, and that will make Ethereum grow in value. Let's participate more. So again, there's demand for Ether if you want to get GAUI. So it's a self-reinforcing economic system. Until when? Until it reaches equilibrium. Again, this is nothing new. So for example, what was the equilibrium of smartphones in 2007? Well, zero, because, well, I will make another question. What was the equilibrium point of smartphones in 2006? Zero, because the smartphone wasn't, well, it was invented already, but we didn't know. But there was no smartphones out there. Well, what's the level of equilibrium of smartphones in the world today? Well, I haven't seen the charts, but I'm pretty sure that just because of normal, if you go, I mean, we here in Mexico, we have, let's say, about the iPhone, right? We got the iPhone until the iPhone 3 because there was no enough factories to supply all the demand in the world until year number 3, right? So until 2010, the iPhone got into Mexico. But now you go to the stores, and what happens usually after, now it's been 15 years, you see that the new one is coming, so they drop the value of the last year. This happened a lot with cars, for example. I mean, many goods. So you see the change, right? So here in Mexico, you will never see an iPhone for a discount, not even the last year or whatever iPhone it was. Actually, the resale value for used iPhones was pretty high, but now that starts coming down. And it happened the same with the pandemic and the nearshoring with the iPhone 14, right? It has been quite demanded, but there's not enough, just because other issues of supplying chips, and in the car industry as well, the chips problem. So that took the price up, plus a lot of money being issued by the US government, and that brought inflation in the US pretty high. But now prices are going down. So you see there in front of your eyes the loss of supply working, right? So so that is the way in which the protocol itself is backing up, okay? So it has two routes, and the only thing that we need to manage is have a sense of adoption. Probably, again, this is what, when I say manage, is not something very difficult to do, but it needs to be done. In all, let's say, all the inventory, that could be the inventory problem of any industry. I can give you many examples, but it's not the point. Hopefully you get it. But when so how we expect to see this? Well, again, hopefully something like this, quantity, something like that. And then something magical happens, right? So the price of GAUI always will be equal to the index. And I'm sorry, GAU. And GAUI, it will be equal to wrap Ether in our example, okay? For now, we're using Matic, okay? Just to take that out of the way. But maybe in the future, if we need to, there's another blockchain in which it's better for the purposes, we just move the whole thing, right? Always need to comply with the conditions that is scarce. I gave you the example of Polkadot being a terrific project as well for doing this, but DOT doesn't comply with the scarce property of the decentralized asset, so we cannot move to Polkadot. Polkadot in the sense of DOT, Polkadot in the sense of making our own blockchain, maybe, we don't know. So for our thought experiment, what I want you to think is the properties of the whole thing, not exactly the details. So this will be equal always to the index over time, and GAUI equals to repetition. And what happened is that when this phase starts to happen, let's call this TF1, meaning time future 1 and time future 2. The amount or the quantity of circulating supply of GAU at least needs to be equal than the amount worth in GAUI. Why? Because in a closed system like this, I told you that the value of the market, meaning the example that I gave you about that security, I'm not saying that GAU is a security. I'm just saying that it has two behaviors: the open market and the value that is wrapping up. The value that is wrapping up is something that in finance is called valuation. So it can be cash plus other things, business models and so on. So just think about Google, okay? So Google is a searching tool, it's for free. But why Google is valued 1 trillion? Well, because they do advertising, they do licensing of their services to other companies. That's called business to business. Because they do now they have payments, and now they have cloud services, and I mean, you know, hopefully you understand what I'm saying is from a free service, once it gets adoption, then you can bring many business models upon the one that is cash, which is the revenue. So always this has been done. So basically what I'm saying is, since investment banking exists, the whole purpose of an investment bank, if a company wants to go public, they hire an investment bank to evaluate the first ticker of the security. So it's fair to the public to buy that security. So they need to again calculate what is the value of that company. And the answer is not just cash or goods. It's more complex than that. So depending on the industry, there are different models that are used. So here is the same. So at least GAU needs to be equal to the value in cash, that's for sure. But if we have millions of people using the service, then there are other values, and that adds up. So just the cash is a relationship usually to 5 to 1. Why? Because not all the people move their money all the time, all their money. So remember, one of the purposes of GAUGECASH is that for many people is the best way to store their cash or hedging. So I mean, you can see it right away. We can talk about, well, I can show you that in lecture number 4. That behavior is very, very well established in Bitcoin, right? Meaning the market cap, which is the total amount just divided by circulating supply, is always more than the volume traded per day, which is logic. Not all Bitcoin, meaning circulating supply, is traded every day. Is the same for any monetary systems. That's why central banks, they don't need to print all the worth of GDP in paper cash technology, because not all the money is traded every day, right? That should be obvious to you. So this is a behavior that we expect, but in terms of purchase power, it should be equal. In what form? Well, these 500 million GAUI or GAUI, they have the same property as Ethereum in terms of you can divide them by WI. So now it should be another very interesting change or shift in your way of thinking, that in the future it will be, what matters is if this system is adopted, you can buy goods with GAUI as well, right? It will be the same as buying with GAU. Why? Because if the system is in equilibrium, sorry, just like this part, there's nothing much more to do. And the whole purpose of GAU is like people accept it. If they don't accept it, this project is not going to be successful. Okay. If people accept it, meaning whatever use case, non-profits, corporations, you name it, there are thousands of use cases. Then if that market, whatever it is, will get to an equilibrium, for sure. Just like Facebook's accounts. You grow exponentially, and then equilibrium. Coca-Cola, you grow, now it's in equilibrium. Bimbo, the largest bakery in the world, grow, it's in equilibrium. And then grow is just a matter of other very, very easy. When you are a very, very large company, then just the changes again in growth are going to be measured by, let's say, if you go to a new country in which you are not, or if you are in a country, just if there are more babies being born, you know that they are going to use your service. For example, drinking water, right? The only way in which that market can grow is there is more people. So that can be quantifiable as well. So anyways, but as I said, those all measurements are inherent there in the GDP, right? Because GDP is produced by people, all machines now, technology. That could be a shift as well, but like, we'll see. But it's not a problem to measure the whole thing. So now, when that point, or in the future, we get till that point, guess what? GAUI is not going to be volatile, right? It's pretty cool, no? So we basically did a machine that serves in the ramp up of adoption that maybe is 10, 20 years, which is not is needed. That's why after 10 years of Bitcoin or more, 15 years, the problem of volatility is there, right? So we want to solve that problem for the next 20 years. But when that is accomplished, the scarce asset is going to be not volatile. So the value is going to be equal. But for people that are willing to bet that GAUE is going to solve this problem, which is now volatility, they can take advantage of the growth. So this is the same as venture capitals. Why they put the money back in Google or Facebook or whatever? Because they want to run the adoption part. So it's the same here, okay? So the value of GAUE, that's Rapid Ether, we're basically promoting just by economic conditions or pushing that the value of Rapid Ether equal to GAUE goes up in value, plus other values that come in terms of valuation, because if many people is using, again, that has more value in terms of future business models that we don't know. Well, we know some of them that could be obvious, but I will not spend time on that. And there's going to be a relationship of market cap against volume of GAUE traded, but the circulating supply multiplied by the index should be equal to the market cap of GAUE. I'll show you that behavior in the next lecture. So there's, I believe, something, anything else to be said in this lecture? Probably we will finish with this. Maybe the last thing I want to, let me go back here a little bit after we have spent all this time. These were the topics. So just by recapping pretty fast, we have created a value that is very stable. At the level of a smart contracts, it's conditioned as if you want to get that service, you need to put down another asset that is volatile. In the other hand, we have another token that is people that is willing to accept some kind of risk to provide liquidity to the system. This machinery is, just to give you another example, is in which the whole futures market is based upon. And it was a great discovery of finance. The largest futures exchange in the world is the exchange in Chicago. And the whole purpose is to stabilize the prices of commodities. So not too many years ago, basic commodities like grains and vegetables and fruits, those come from agriculture. And agriculture has a very, very big problem, which is weather. And you know, weather is one year can be good, the next one can be bad, and so on and so forth. That's why many cultures, even they have gods and celebrations for a good year of cropping. Hopefully that's the word. But that has a problem, right? There was, suppose that it was a bad year for tomatoes, or there was a plague or something. So there was few tomatoes in the industry, so the price of tomatoes went up, or corn or rice or whatever, doesn't matter. Cotton, I mean, many things that you give for certain today, that if you go to the store in many parts of the world, the price is very stable from one day to the other. Well, futures market, what they say, okay, let's make a contract, a future contract, in which we bring speculators and they buy at a certain price, the buy of tomato in the future to the producer. So that mechanism assures that the producer, what happened with the producer? The producer, he's at risk by weather next year. And so he says, okay, if I am the only one producing tomato in the world or in a certain region, the price is going to go up and I'm going to do pretty well. But if I am in the part in which, by weather reasons or another reasons like plague or whatever, I was affected, so I don't have tomatoes or few tomatoes, I can my company can be broke, right? So let's bring a speculator and let's agree on a certain price. So I can be sure that whatever it happens, at least I have covered my expenses and some profit. So I give, or I it's a word, hopefully is the correct word. I translate, or I move the risk to a person that is willing to speculate in the future price of tomatoes. Why someone is going to be willing to do that? Well, maybe he studies weather and he's a professional and or I don't know. I mean, there can be some reasons, but like maybe he foresees that it's going to be a cold year, warm year, blah, blah, or if he's an expert in the field or whatever. He says, yeah, I'm going to buy this because I believe tomatoes are going to go up in value next year. So I pay now to the guy that is going to produce it, and I will wait 1 year, and the next year, if the price goes up, right, I'll take the profit of it. Well, all these mechanisms going back and forth of futures contract, then you have futures of futures, right? Maybe you want to sell to other person your contract, okay? So all these markets, what at the end they do is they stabilize the price of goods and services going forward. And that has been very, very useful for economies to grow with basic things that we need every day. So GAUGECASH, it is like that. So in that sense, we are bringing very, very new things to the table. But in terms of economics and finance, we're done. Basically, everything that we're doing is just very well established. But you need to put all these pieces together and then say, okay, if this new blockchain asset class can hold with these things that have been done in modern finance. And the answer was yes. That was probably the whole research in 2018, 19. And then now we have the service ready for you to use. But what I want to give away is we are pretty sure that all this works, and hopefully with this explanation you get a sense or an understanding that it works, right? Anyways, see you till the next time.